Yeah, Scott, just kind of wanted to start with a general question about the whole season. I mean, what are your takeaways from the 38 games you guys were able to play in this shortened season, and what impact it had on the growth of the prospects this year?
Well, it's remarkable that we got all 38 in. Um, I think credit goes to the coaches and the players down there for abiding, and none of our players during this season were struck with COVID, which was great. And thus, they abided by the protocols that were set place and reinforced by our coaching staff down there. So that'd be the first. I'm proud of them. I'm glad they got the games in. That's probably the first thing. I commend them on all that and the protocols that they went through, and to grind and to hang in there and get those games in is huge. From a standpoint of development, I think it was a good year. Obviously, players have been off for a while, but I think a lot of our young players that played down there got some valuable minutes, probably more so than a normal year would have been, just because of the taxi squad. I'm not saying all the taxi squad would have been down there. You know what I mean. Each team would have had a couple, three players probably down there, which pushes everybody down a little bit. But I think from a development standpoint, our young players grabbed what they needed to do, and they did a good job. I commend them on it.
Looking at earlier this season, I think you signed a raft of AHL guys, about six of them in one go. Wondering what that offseason looked like last year in terms of ability to get guys and what the market looked like, and then what you expect this summer to look like in terms of those AHL contracted guys.
Well, I think we're all hopeful as we on this call to have some form of normal year. It was touch and go whether or not we were playing. We didn't know how it was all going to fall. So you just have to have your ducks in a row and communicating with people in terms of what players might have been available out there from an AHL perspective. And I was aware of the players that were out there, and I think the type of players that we needed as well. Obviously, we needed some experience. We were a very young group down there, as you guys know, and so I thought we did a decent job, and the players, especially that were on AHL contract, did a very good job of blending in with our young players, and just kind of showing them the ropes. And on top of them playing good hockey, they did a good job. Now this summer, there's going to be, you guys know, we signed some, European forwards that are coming over on NHL deals. I think we're going to have more guys under NHL contract compared to last year. It was just kind of that cycle. So there probably won't be as many American League contracts signed. So, we've got to determine who will be back, who might, all those kind of things. And that's just some of it's out of those guys, the players' control, because we just, we have expansion, we have, draft, etc. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I have a good idea of what particular spots we do need to fill down there.
Send it on over to Matt.
Yeah, Whitey. So with Riley, Damiani, and Adam Maskeren, how close are they to the NHL, and how does that impact the way that you guys in Dallas go about this summer?
Well, they've done what they needed to do, is to have good years, productive years. Riley Damiani, I think, was the leading rookie scorer at the end of the day, which is pretty impressive for a guy that probably wouldn't have got as much time in a normal year. So he grabbed it, and he was our top. He's a good player. He's a 200-foot player. And much like my exit interview with him yesterday, it's all about how he addresses his offseason in terms of where he is. And if he sets himself up well in the summer from a fitness standpoint, conditioning, strength, comes in and just he pushes the envelope in NHL main camp, who knows what can happen. I certainly feel we've got an NHL player there at some point. Whether it's next season, that's kind of up to him. Adam Maskeren bounced back after a year off from his surgery, had a strong year. He too was the same messages about his fitness and conditioning here over the summer. Come in and have a good camp and push the envelope, and make us make decisions. It's the same. I probably told you the same thing, Matt. It's really up to the player to make us make decisions. Will they do they make things a little murkier? Yeah, but that's what they need to do. And credit them for doing that. Now it's important that they continue in the offseason. because the next step, as you know, is the biggest step, and the American League is going to be a better league next year too. So that's the challenge for them, and they've got to just have a really good summer and have a good NHL camp and see where the chips fall.
Yeah, and what were your impressions of Adam Scheel throughout the month or so you guys had him?
Well, Sheeler was just thrown into it, as you know. He just played a lot of games there. When he came in, we were in the midst of a crazy schedule. That's just how it fell with COVID, and then the storm too in Texas. As we all know, it pushed some games around for us with San Jose, and we ended up having 15 games in 21 nights. So he went right from college right into games. Not a lot of practice time. I commend him on the work he did. He did a good job getting in there. I think by the end of that particular road trip, he needed some practice time. He got on it. He got 12 games in. It's huge. Great experience for him. We talked yesterday, and yeah, he would have liked to win maybe one or two more of them, as we all do. But I think from an experience standpoint, he knows what the league's about now. That will allow him to prepare accordingly over the summer, go back home, do his thing, get prepared. And he stopped here in Dallas on the way home, met with Jeff Reese. They went over three things just to tidy up here over the summer and get going on it. And he's in a good spot. He played well. I like how he plays the game, and now he just needs experience.
Send it on over to Patrick.
Yes, Scott. What do you like to get out of X interviews with players, when all's said and done and, you guys part ways for the summer?
You know what? It's more, I think it's the message that you send them. Like the players, like I've said here a couple of times in this call already, it's about how they prepare now. It's certainly we want them to step back for a week or 2 weeks, just to mentally. It's been a grind on all these players. For instance, Thomas Harley, he was in 65 days in the NHL bubble, then he's in 45 days in the U20 bubble, then he's with us in Dallas in camp, and he's 7 days in quarantine here, and then with Texas all year in pretty much a team bubble, and they really didn't do anything socially, and that was kind of quiet until the season was over, just to recharge currently. But then they've got to address the physical side of it. Mm-hmm. None of these guys, the young players especially, have the so-called man strength yet, so they've got to find ways to gain strength. And that's the biggest thing is how they challenge themselves physically in the offseason. Their work is just as important once they recharge here for a week or two now as it is come the fall when they're coming into camp. They can't put it away. I think it reinforces our message of being a professional hockey player is a lifestyle, and it's a 365-day lifestyle, and that's what I try to reinforce.
With San Antonio leaving this past offseason, you guys were kind of on an island, and you were on an island during a pandemic season with travel and everything. What were the challenges going into this season that you guys were facing in that regard?
Getting 38 games. That was probably the biggest challenge. But I appreciate all the partners in the American Hockey League that all, the Central Division opponents that played us, and then the Pacific Division opponents that we are partnered with. They were, I called them, and they were all in. And so we do appreciate it that they were good partners, and we got our games in. Now they took it to us pretty good. They're out in the West, but all in all, we're appreciative of our partners. That was the biggest thing, was getting the games. The AHL, under difficult circumstances, managed to get a schedule in. I know it was all over the map, right? But it was good to be flexible that way, right? So that would be the biggest challenge. You know what? It doesn't change. Our schedule is what it is. It wouldn't matter if San Antonio was in the league or not. Obviously, that's a bonus for us in Cedar Park. However, I've always said all you can do is play the schedule that you have, and that's how it goes, and that's my approach. It's been that way for a long time, and that hasn't changed.
Then you look at a guy like Thomas Harley being able to play in the AHL this year. The NHL CHL rule has been kind of a topic of conversation. Where do you stand on that, and where do you see that issue potentially going in the next couple of years?
You know what? It's probably above my pay grade. you know what? In Thomas's case, his development grew exponentially by playing in the American League all year. It would have grown in the OHL for sure. However, he's one step away from the NHL and the AHL, so logically, his game is going to grow quicker. And I believe he's knocking on the door. And you know, in different circumstances, if schedules had aligned properly, protocols, etc., who knows? Not only Thomas Harley, but maybe a couple other guys would have got a game or two in, but just didn't work out. But overall, his development is trending very positively in a good fashion. I like where he is. He has issues or areas of games where he needs to work on. He knows it, but he's improved in those areas, and he has a bit to go. But I think I expect him to be right around it next season.
Thank you.
Let's go over to Saad.
Hey, Whitey, good to see you. What did you make of some of those guys who were kind of, going up and down in terms of like Ty Dellandrea, Camano? How did you see those guys when they did come back to the AHL, and how did their development take off when they did?
Well, Cammy never really got down, so he'd be tough. Ty, I'll just talk about Ty. Ty was in a perfect world, which we're not living in and didn't live in during the season. Ideally, he would have got more games in the American League this year, but he played 26 NHL games, which is great. The minutes weren't that high, so you know, I would have liked to get him more in the American League. But from how he finished the season, I know he was logging 20 to 22 minutes a night, playing in all facets of the game in Texas. And he was trending upward, and I think it gives him some confidence into the offseason. And so that's very positive. Ideally, I would have liked to get him more games down there just to start the year there, but our year was just how it was, and he earned a spot on the taxi squad out of camp, and schedules didn't permit us to flip him around as much as we would have liked. And that's just how it was. But he managed it well. He got in some games NHL-wise. He understands the NHL now and what it's going to take for him to stay there. But his time in the American League was very positive at the end of the season.
And just to follow up on that, how important are those AHL reps? Because you see Jason Robertson take off this year in the NHL after a full year in the AHL. We saw it with Rope and Denny as well in the past. Ty was thrust into the NHL from day one and then kind of came back to the AHL. Just how important can that AHL experience be before you do test the waters in the NHL?
Well, everybody's on different paths, but I think this year is an anomaly in terms of the development. And Ty earned his spot, on the taxi squad, and he earned those games. And good for him. And it was just one of those years. If it's a normal year, he might have pushed camp, and is he around it? He might have started in the American League, get his games, and get his 20 games in, and then he would have grabbed it. But everybody takes different paths. Everybody takes certain time. Everybody's, I know from a public's perception, everybody's in a hurry to have these young guys in the NHL, but they all take different times. And we have, you mentioned the names, Jason Robertson, Dennis Gurianov, Rope Hentz, they all took different allotments of times to get to the NHL, and they're much better for spending time in the American League. And they were good pros in the American League. They understood, they played hard down there, but they learned how to play. They were coached well down there, and when their time came up and when they were ready to push through the door in the NHL, they did such. And Ty's going to be the same way. When he's ready to push through that door and be a 10-year guy in the NHL, he'll do it.
Let's kick back over to Steven.
Yeah, Whitey, I wanted to ask you, with the 38 games now behind you, the schedule is a little different in terms of their baseball style, where you had the same opponent over and over. What's your take on that, how having done it for a full season as opposed to the 1-and-1s that you can have often in the league otherwise?
It's difficult to, win a series outright, for sure, home or away. In hockey, and I think it's like that. I'm not a baseball connoisseur by any stretch, but I know it's difficult to sweep a series home or road in baseball, and the same boat. So the 4 games, obviously that was, we did that a couple times, but that was just planned for costs and things like that and getting the games in. But it's hard to play the same team 3 times in a row. Is it something that we might have to get used to? Potentially. It really hinges on how the schedule grid looks moving ahead. And we have to be flexible in Texas too, if from a standpoint of travel for our partners in the league. So if we have to go down that path, at least our group has experienced it now. Our coaches have experienced it now. They understand, and it's not the norm, but I thought our group embraced it in well. Yeah, we would have liked to win more games, but you know what? I think from a development standpoint, our guys played the games, and the series played out how they played out. At the end of the day, it's about getting the games in and making sure your players develop, and I think we did such in the 38-game slate this year.
And then you mentioned, we talked a lot about Harley as an OHL, would have been the OHL player, but I want to ask about the development of guys like Antonio Stranges and Nick Porco, who, were more on that 5th line kind of feel. What did this year do for them, and what were they able to learn?
Well, the biggest thing is they got to play some hockey, right? I mean, they got to be around a team all year. They did not have the luxury of, going to the WHL to start, or the Q, right, to start. So it was difficult situation for them, but they embraced it. There were no promises in terms of games. It was more about getting down there, getting around our development coaches, learning our coaches in Texas with Neil and Travis. And they earned what they got. Would we have liked to see them play more? Yeah, but it wasn't from a standpoint of, were they quite ready to play all the time? Probably not. But they got in an opportunity. They understand, what it took, what it is to be a pro. They were very good in the room. Kind of the little kids in the whole group, basically, is what I've been told. And they did well. I think the biggest thing is they hopefully they've learned to take something from the American League and their experiences, and to make sure they apply it when they return to junior and play. We tell our junior kids all the time, you got to do this, really, until they experience it on the ice. It never really sets in. So hopefully that will help them move ahead.
One thing for me, Scott, just on Maverick Bork and his finish to the year, what was it like for him? He had pretty much the closest thing to a traditional season as the length in the QMJHL, but what did you see from him when he came to the team and played those final 6 games?
Well, I credit Maverick a lot. Obviously he had played a lot of hockey, so that was a bonus for him coming into our group. But you guys can imagine if, much like a European coming over to Texas for the first time, there's a bit of a, language, etc. He did a really good job of integrating, and obviously our group was welcoming too. As you know, Toast, we had a very good room. Leadership was good, brought him in, and to Maverick's credit, and I got to see 4 of his games. I think 6 games that he played live, and he got better every game. And then as soon as he got his first assist Friday, I believe it was in Iowa, his confidence and his impact on the game just rose, and he was solid. You could see he just felt like he belonged, and credit him. It's not easy to do what he did. He's an 18-year-old just learning the game and learning the pro game, but he's got some game, and he too is going to take that experience back to the Q and into the summer as he prepares for main camp next year. And he's a good-looking prospect for sure.
Send this over to Saad.
What do you know what the plan is for a development camp or Traverse City, and if you guys will be able to do that in the capacity that you have before?
Development camp is still to be determined. I don't think it'll be in the summer myself, but I don't know the answer on that. Traverse City's planned. I think that'll be mid-September area. I don't think it's a slam dunk yet, but it's pretty close. I think that's about as much info as I can get. I mean, I'm planning accordingly, I guess I could say for it. Hopefully that'll happen. And we always think that that's a good tool for our prospects as they get prepared for main camp, soon thereafter. So I'm preparing that we're going to Traverse right now.
Thank you.
Send it over to Matt.
Yeah, with Thomas Harley, what's the line for you guys? What's the balance in trying to get him to improve defensively, but also not losing who he is as an offensive defenseman that kind of carries puck and carries play, and will we want to lead the rush a lot too?
I figured you were going to have this question at some point. All good. You know what? It's the same situation. You have to play in the NHL. You have to be responsible offensively, and you have to show an urgency defensively. And that is what Thomas is working on. And his last game of the year was very positive in that way, in my opinion. Like, I thought he was really solid and he competed defensively and did what he needed to do without it jeopardizing or taking away his elements of game that you mentioned, his skating. Like, he scored goal. The points and the goals, they're going to come because he's that way. He gets pucks through it. He gets a shot through. He transports puck very well. He snaps the puck. We don't want to take anything away from him. He's just got to learn how to play defensively, and that's the message. He understands it. He gets it. It's just a matter of executing on a consistent basis, and that's just growth and development. And it takes a little time, but he's not that far away. As I mentioned, the 4 games I saw live, he got better every game, but I thought his best game was his last game, where didn't really notice him all that much, but in a good way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then one last housekeeping thing with as far as injuries go, is Kawaguchi the only one that had surgery, and is everyone else going to be fine for training camp?
Yes. I mean, there were a couple guys banged up. Damiani was banged up, but he played like he soldiered through it. Nothing too serious. He just needs some rest, basically. Kawaguchi is the only one that needs, he's coming back here early June to be checked out by our docs, and then I think his training will start ramping up. So he's the sole guy, I believe. That's as far as I know right now. Our exit physicals were last night. Don't have quite the full report, but I didn't get any heads up from anything.
Okay, send it over to Steven.
Scott, we talked a lot about how young the team was generally, but also the coaching staff is pretty young, and this is Neil's first year as a coach end to end. What did you see from Neil and Travis in terms of their coaching style, what they were able to do this year, and kind of where do you see them going as we move forward?
My message to them yesterday when I was down in Cedar Park, briefly when I talked to them about it, and I also saw them in Iowa quite a bit, and, is just to keep getting better. They're very good. They communicate well. They integrate well as a staff. And I should add probably Patrick Dolan, our video coach. He is an integral part of those 3 down there, and they've done a very good job. And their communication with the players is very good. I know the players respect the coaching staff, regardless of the experience aspect of it. Neil's been a head coach for a long time, not in the American League per se, and he's a young man, but he's a good head coach. I just want them to continue their growth. Look forward to having them around the NHL team, for NHL camp. They'll be around the Traverse City group and continue to develop. And they know it. I tell it to them once every month or so. Their job is to develop Dallas Stars, and they know it. And they have to develop the Dallas Stars in a winning environment. They know that down there. So they've been a pleasure to work with, and they will all be back next year as well. I'm sure that might have been a follow-up.
Definitely. Also, the league generally has been trending toward younger coaches in the head coaching ranks. Wondering if there is a certain inherent advantage to having a coach who's so much closer to the player's age, and maybe some recent experience there, if you can speak to that a little bit.
You know what? I just want a good coach, at the end of the day. And there's a familiarity with Neil and his professionalism that I've known him for, Idaho years, and when he was an assistant and the head, and then, coming into us as an assistant, I think it's been a natural transition for him, and Our relationship is good. We talk about a lot of different things, hockey, life, etc. He understands how I like to operate, and I trust that he's going to implement how I like to operate things. And he's done a really good job. I don't think it's got to be the right fit for your organization, and for me personally, I think, and both of those guys, all three of those guys have been a really good fit.
Over to Patrick for a couple final ones.
Yeah. First is a two-part question. In a typical year, how close is AHL free agency or guys that are on the NHL, AHL bubble that will be kind of your leader guys down at this level? How much does free agency at that level resemble that we are more familiar with at the NHL level?
You have to be, you have to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You're not talking a lot of players. Each team's probably, and everybody has a different philosophy. We've been predominantly young down there in terms of our veteran status. You have to have your ducks in a row. You have to know about the player. For me, the biggest thing is the character of the older player, where he still has that drive to want to be in the NHL, but he also understands where he is in terms of his career and his importance of impacting the younger player. And, everybody's going to have their lists. I know the areas that, we need to focus on that way that can help our development guys, but also that if we need a guy up here short-term in Dallas, that he can fulfill that role. And I think all teams are that way.
Yeah.
I just, we're not into the 5 or 6 guys. I like 2 or 3, and then blend it in with, a guy that's been in the league 3 or 4 years. I think that's enough experience in my eyes.
And then, kind of to follow up on that, as Steven said, it was a really tough free agent market for a lot of guys this past offseason. Assuming things are trending back to normal, do you see the market getting better for some of those veteran guys or bubble guys?
Yeah, I do, for sure. I think everyone in our business wants to get back to some form of normalcy, and that includes those particular players you're discussing. So I believe it will. Yeah. I think the market, there's going to be a lot of players out there though. Mm-hmm. And it's, players have to be smart about their decisions, and organizations do too. And, I think, hey, look, the players, it was a tough year for American League players, tough year economically, no question about it. It was more about just, it was basically a bridge to next year, right? For most of them, it was survive and move along. And so credit to all those guys that grinded through all that.
And then just last thing on that, as a, with the caveat that, if things are trending back to normal, how closely do you think the AHL of next season resembles a more typical AHL? And if not, what do you think might be some of those differences?
I'm preparing like it's going to be normal. That's obviously the Canadian side of things is obviously a big question mark. That's not rocket science. It's how it is, but hopefully that'll get resolved sooner than later. But I'm anticipating a complete schedule, 76 game schedule whenever I get it from the league. And, I suspect we'll be traveling all over getting the games in. That's what I believe. And I know that's everyone's hope in our business.
Thank you.